Cheers, guys. Epix911, welcome to the Elitist Geek. In this video, I want to talk about the HTC Vive and just provide an update a few weeks after receiving the unit. Pass on some tips. A lot of these tips are things you don't find online, and I think might be useful for you guys. I mentioned in the first video, and my opinion hasn't changed. I'm an IT guy. It's my trade, my bread and butter. I have been constantly freaking tweaking this thing pretty much right up until yesterday. I finally got the last few settings understood. The average person, you'll set it up, but you're not going to understand the tweaks and the settings, right? Now let me explain. There's two facets to that. There's the VR specific features that VR software introduces and VR hardware. And we'll get into what some of those are. There's also the driver side of the equation. NVIDIA, AMD, traditional settings that can hamper performance, can benefit performance, and ones that quite simply mean squat. And one of those is Crossfire and SLI mean absolutely nothing. Hopefully we'll get to a point where they can figure something out. But right now, if you've got SLI or Crossfire, you're not taking advantage of it. All right. So I've had the unit. So here it is. This is the HTC Vive. It's a sexy little beast. Haven't tried the Oculus in comparison, right? The Rift. So I can't really attest to that, but I'll show you guys what it looks like on the inside. So those are the lenses. That's what you see. And that's essentially what you're up against, right? The mask I mentioned in the previous video, there's a bit of a gap here, right? On the bottom part where your nose is. So I definitely recommend using low light levels, right? Don't have a lot of high light levels. It's going to break the immersion at times. What I love about the HTC Vive is essentially it's got a superior tracking system because you've got two Lighthouse units. And the next tip I want to talk about is how you set those up. Now they talk about it in the manuals, but they don't really tell you why, and you could easily miss it. The why being it should ideally be located about a foot above your head. So standing on the floor, if you're a 6-foot person, you should put these lighthouses, the unit themselves, right, at about 7 feet high, right? So you want to be higher than your head. And the reason is you can be playing the game and you'll get motion tracking calibration issues, right? You could end up standing where you're not supposed to. But the biggest offender, completely immersion busting, is your screen suddenly turning white or gray because it's lost tracking, right? So configure them high. I highly recommend, okay? They put a lot of emphasis on mounting these things to your wall, right? Trust me, you better be really damn sure or you're going to just make a bunch of holes in your wall for nothing, because I've already moved these things 10 times, 10 ways to Tuesday, right? You're going to move them a lot. I highly recommend you go to Amazon and you invest a little more money. I know you put a lot of money into the VR. Buy yourself some tripods, right? You can get $25 tripods that at full extension would put the Lighthouse at that 7-foot level, right? So you don't have to worry. It's basically, and easy to move. It's on a tripod, so it's more stable. It's less permanent, right? So that would be my second tip. The third tip has to do with those drivers and settings that I talked about. So in Steam VR, you've got some items, okay? Under the performance tab, and this one is huge. This is an issue that plagued me literally from the first day, all right? And it's called allow reprojection. Simply what it does is it seeks to balance the frame rate to prevent stuff like motion sickness, nausea, which is motion sickness, to give you a stable frame rate. All right. When I had that check mark off and essentially I disallowed reprojection, even simple games, I had to set everything to low and I would still get jerking, right, of the polygonal world. So make sure until drivers mature, until better video cards are out, and I've got a Radeon 290, so I have basically a Crossfire configuration, but again, I don't use Crossfire for this because it doesn't work. But the allow reprojection actually allows me to play games without having to see that jerkiness, right? My next complaint would have to do with Elite Dangerous, which is the game I bought this for. It's easily the most immersive, it has the most potential, but if you have a Vive, it's got some issues. Issues with the skybox, right? It doesn't look like you're looking into infinity. It can appear like you're seeing a painted sky and that you're flying around in a sphere, right? I haven't noticed that too bad, but it's definitely there. What I have noticed is text that's really hard to read in the UI inside your ship, right? Changing it to green helps. The orange is just a terrible color. I know red is night vision friendly, but orange is just terrible. It's really smudgy, really difficult to make out characters. Now, as I'm recording this, Beta 5 of Elite Dangerous had mentioned in the notes a fix for this by allowing people to tweak the UI size, right, of fonts. But unfortunately, it didn't quite make it into the beta for testing. So they're going to include it at a future date. But that's okay. I'll wait patiently for that. Like I said, Elite Dangerous has the most potential. And now that I know about this stupid allow reprojection, I can actually enjoy the game. It still suffers from, clarity, reading the stuff, but it is 10 times better than it was before. And I've waited this long. I've got a HTC stick, right? Throttle and flight stick. So I want to play the damn game, and I will play it. There's no escaping if you buy one of these units now. You're basically playing mostly what amounts to tech demos, all right? There's not a lot of complete experiences out there. There's some decent ones, but most of them are either early game or WIP, work in progress, right? The one that everybody kind of universally agrees on, which is the Space Pirate Trainer, is itself an early access unfinished game. And while it's a lot of fun, it's not something you're going to do every single day for days on end, right? You're going to get bored of it probably after a few hours. It's great to get some aggression out, play it for 5-10 minutes like an arcade shooter, right? And then you're done. So you're not getting a lot of the Elite Dangerous style experience, but then again, even with Elite Dangerous, like I said, it's a work in progress. They're still ironing things out. But I am hopeful within the next few weeks, most of the Elite stuff's going to be resolved. And that's part of the reality of being an early adopter, right? You're going to buy hardware or software, and you're essentially going to be the guinea pig for the eventual mass market penetration that takes place, or not, right? Of course, we all hope it will, because one of the positives that I have out of all this, when they do the VR right, there is nothing like it, all right? I purchased Portal VR off Steam yesterday, which was, I believe, just like not DLC, it was a mod at some point. They modified it to work with VR units. It is so tight. It's so awesome. But again, when I had that allow reprojection check mark off, the game was annoying to play. It was painful, right? Literally seizure triggering. If you have, grand mal or petite mal seizure potential with that kind of stuff, you want that option on, right? Do not fool around with that, because the shimmering is brutal and it really, really promotes eye strain quickly. So Next, I want to talk about some driver settings. So there's driver settings that basically amount to nothing. Crossfire SLI I kind of touched on. You're benefiting from AA and AF to a degree, all right? But they are huge killers of performance. Even just nudging the first few AA/AF options quickly degrade your frame rate, right? You're going to benefit more from model detail drawing, terrain, and object viewing distance. Those are the things that are going to be more beneficial than the traditional, video type settings, right? That took me a little while to kind of get the grip of that change in mentality, right? Because a lot of those NVIDIA desktop 2D gaming options, they're noticeable, right? You crank up AA or AF or, VSync, for example, is huge on a monitor, right? Those things aren't nearly as noticeable. Yes, high ultra looks great on Elite Dangerous, but it's more that low setting doesn't look that bad, right? The gap between the two isn't colossal, right? Again, most of that will probably change, agreed. So what about the controllers? What are these like after using them? So let's wrap up with the face, the HMD first. It's definitely a bulky device, and the common theme you're going to come across constantly to yourself is, boy, this is going to fucking rock when they do away with cords, when it goes wireless. And I agree. You are constantly aware of the cords, stepping over them, twirling yourselves counter or clockwise to kind of keep the coil behind you. Those are things you're going to start doing on autopilot, but it would sure be nice to not have to do those things. So definitely, also if you're somebody who gets hot quick, right? If you're somebody who's prone to sweating, you got clammy hands, clammy skin. Thankfully, I'm very dry, like my hands are very dry, but even me, I sweat a lot, right? Unfortunately. The foam that they put around here, they're removable, right? They've got one for narrow faces and wide faces. When you're playing with one of these with family or buddies, it can get downright disgusting, nasty. In fact, I made my own, and here's just a strip to show you. Went to Home Depot, bought insulation foam, the kind that has a sticky side, right? I put Velcro on it to make my own because nobody wants to use this after I've sweat in it. Literally, like, picture a headband completely filled with sweat and then wearing it, but it's not your sweat. It's kind of gross, right? It's no different here. And to get to that disgusting, gross sweat level doesn't take me more than about 15, 20 minutes. That thing's pretty much sopping wet, right? It only comes with two. God knows how you clean them. So like I said, I hacked my own through Home Depot, which has definitely helped. It also has the advantage of being thinner, so your eyes are closer to the lens, right? Because you've got two ways to essentially tweak this. You've got the IPD, right, which is your interpupil distance, and then you've got the dials on the side that pop out, right, and see, allow the unit to move away from your eyes. So the lenses go away from your eyes. I rarely use that, but I could see it being beneficial for somebody with glasses, for example, right? Because I think that initial distance is already far enough away from your eyes. If anything, I would have liked to have had that initial distance be kind of like a -3 on the dial, right? So it's right up close and gives you the ability from right up close to move. Right now, it gives you 7 settings, but the first setting, for me anyways, is already at a comfortable distance, right? So I think it would cater to more people if they move that neutral line back closer to the eyes. So that's basically the HMD. Yeah, it becomes pretty nasty, and they only give you 2. And I know they're starting to sell certain replacement parts. Who knows how much that costs, but I know people are going to be buying a lot of these. And I live in, you know, the Vancouver area, right? So granted, we've got awesome weather right now, but it's pretty temperate climate and it gets hot. I can imagine some poor schmuck in Alabama, right, where humidity is off the charts. This thing's going to be nasty. So I also recommend, as another tip, to play with some AC or have some cooling solution, a fan or something kind of blows on you, right? Which helps with the immersion too. Kind of makes you feel like you're outside or in some cold building, right? Okay, let's talk about the controllers. The controllers are absolutely amazing. What they do in each game that uses these controllers is they superimpose their models onto these, right? So Portal VR, for example, both of your tools are white, but the whole grip part in your hand follows the exact same model design, right? With just some different texturing. And then the top part looks completely different. But when you're looking at your hands, you're fully immersed because it matches, you know, what you're feeling, the tactile sensation of what you're feeling matches what your eyes see. Definitely, I can see over time things are going to wear down, but the trigger seems pretty good. And the trigger is a mainstay of mostly every game, right? It's like a trigger on a flight stick. This is the button that's going to get the most presses. The dial pad is amazing. It lets you do stuff like in Space Pirate Trainer, set your bullet rate, right? Set your weapon to a beam weapon. 3 bullets, 2, 1, pulsing shots. And you can do that really quickly just with your thumb, right? You basically do it on the fly. The chaperone system is terrific. And I haven't used the front-mounted camera, but I could see it being helpful for things, right? It's still going to be unwieldy to drink and eat with that thing on because, sure, you got your front-mounted camera for some beer, but you get the glass about this far before it knocks the underside of the plastic, right? You have to lift to tilt and drink. So maybe going to the bathroom real quick. You're going to look weird, like some kind of Cylon robot, but it would work for that. So the controllers are awesome. The face mask definitely, like I said, gets pretty gnarly after about half hour, depending on your body composition, right? It's fantastic also for seated VR. So like Elite Dangerous with the Oculus Rift was initially just a seated experience, right? There's nothing cooler than being able to walk around your cockpit with the virtual room experience that the Vive offers you. But if you just want to sit still, there's 2 ways to set up the VR for the Vive. Room, seated. So they make it really, really easy. It's painless to switch back and forth between them. Highly recommend earbuds or over-the-ear earmuffs would be better, right? With positional sound. Do not use your speakers, your main speakers. It is definitely immersion busting, right? You want that positional sound. It just adds so much to the experience. Now, what about that experience itself? Your brain will become convinced that what you see is real. And it's going to happen constantly. And you think that after a few minutes, your brain would make the connection because you know it's not real, right? But take me, for example. I'm scared of heights. Even in-game, any kind of ledge or balcony where I'm peering off into oblivion, I get that weak need in the pit of my stomach, feeling that same fear I get when in open heights. Like I'm fine in a cockpit, right? I am fine in an airplane because it's closed in. But having a drink with somebody on their 25th floor balcony and leaning over the ledge, no thanks. Don't need to be there. Even though your face is enclosed with the HMD, your body gets tricked into feeling it's an open height, right? So I definitely always have a pause, a hesitation, and get that sinking feeling. And a couple of times I've had to force myself, and even just placing my foot above what would be the abyss, it requires a concentrated effort, right? And I find that really cool after 2 weeks. You definitely want to favor, this is going to be my last tip, I'm going to wrap up this video, but you definitely want to favor low graphical settings, right, with great frame rate versus high graphical settings with average or poor frame rate. The frame rate is the most important thing, and not just an average or decent frame rate. You want an excellent frame rate. You should never dip below 90. 75 is passable, doable, but noticeable. 45, in my opinion, is a train wreck. 90 is butter smooth. So if you have to sacrifice a bunch of settings to get 90, do it, because you're going to get more from the immersion of it being fluid than you will on the detail of the textures or the filtering. That's been my opinion anyways. All right, guys, as always, let me know if you have any questions. Leave them in the comments below. Maybe I'll do another follow-up video in a week or so, but I can't wait to get into VR. As always, guys, cheers.